One of the things we like to do at LinkedIn is talk about something that's not on your LinkedIn profile. And when I was looking up her LinkedIn profile, it's an incredibly impressive background. She's global head of marketing at HSBC. But there was an interview earlier in her career where she said she originally wanted to be a makeup artist in television. And sometimes the path not followed is extremely interesting. So in any case, without further ado, she's going to talk through how HSBC is developing global content around an ecosystem that helps aspirant businesses grow their business. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A after that. So Amanda, thanks.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. And yes, I did want to be a makeup artist with the BBC. Still might, actually, I think. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we've done at HSBC. And I'll talk to you a little bit about HSBC as well, for those of you that don't know. We are one of the biggest banks in the world. I think there's only about 2 banks that are bigger than us now, and they're both Chinese. We are in over 80 countries, and we employ 266,000 people. So it's a pretty big organisation. And it's quite hard when you've got so many markets and so many kinds of business. We do retail banking, we do corporate banking, business banking, private banking, and all the global banking and investment banking as well. So it's huge. I look after marketing for all the B2B side around the world. And for those of you that do a similar job to me, you'll know it's actually quite hard to talk to that audience. So the case study I'm going to take you through is really trying to telling you really what we've done in terms of using social media to get that audience on, to talk to them. Okay. So what do we know? When we do any research, the thing that our customers always tell us is that they expect us to get the transactional stuff right. That's it. You don't have there's no forgiveness there if you get that wrong. But the thing that they want us to do, and it's actually quite hard for a bank to do this, is to be more of a strategic partner. Now, I think when you talk about being a strategic partner, I think you're treading on fairly dangerous territory because, especially at the moment, you can only be that strategic partner if you've got really good stuff to tell them. And actually, that good stuff has got to be something that's very unique to you. So I think it's always a dangerous thing to actually start to talk about. But what we wanted to do was actually start to think about, one of the things that we are is an international bank. So it's not just enough to say we're in 80 markets. That's got to count for something. And so the area that we felt that we could really differentiate was to start to think about how that counted for something. And actually, with our audience, how that could actually provide a bit of added value. So the thing that we created is this thing called Global Connections. And what the idea was, more than anything else, is that if you're looking at to do business in another market, quite often when you go and get advice, you'll go to your accountant or a lawyer or a friend, or you'll do a bit of word of mouth. It's all a bit patchy. And if you're a US business and you want to go and do business in China, you've never been there, or if you have been there, you might not know who you've got to go and see. So what we wanted to do was actually develop a platform that helped us sort of get to that real nugget of what we felt differentiated us against lots of the other banks. I'm just going to now show you a quick video that really explains that in a bit more detail.
Global Connections actually positions us as the bank for international business. And what we really wanted to do was set up a platform that could actually start to bring both customers and prospects together.
As an organisation, we have businesses in the markets where our customers want to do business. And actually, through Global Connections, we're able to ensure that our on-the-ground knowledge is being shared with our customers. I think we're very clear that building a brand is no longer just about advertising. It's about content and it's about digital.
The start of it is the website. That's the main place that we're putting a lot of our content. We've also actually brought the stuff that we've done online into a live environment.
It's not just about us taking customers to an emerging market that they perhaps wouldn't have considered before. It's actually about the connections that they make, both with on-the-ground experts when they're there, but also with other customers from other countries.
We also do another piece around a trade forecast tool. So that's another piece of content, if you like, that we put through the Global Connection site.
A lot of organisations can potentially look at trade in the here and now. We wanted a future view of that, and we therefore looked at 3, 5 and 10 years in terms of what's going to happen to trade flows and where are they going to change.
We've been trying to think about how else we could add value in terms of content. We had an idea around what about if you put 2 CEOs in a room and got them to talk about their businesses and how they took their business international.
With the Ideas Exchange programme, we're going to be testing this new YouTube site, and that will launch early in the new year.
If you can put the media content alongside some of the expert content that we have as a business, plus added value around tools and other areas of insight, and then also connect customers through platforms like LinkedIn, I think you end up with a very valuable tool. I think it has to be multimedia, and now more than ever it's going to be around what can you download onto your iPhone. I mean, some of the work we've done around country guides, for example, it's a fantastic app just to get a bit of insight about 26 different markets.
We have a footprint that is greater than the majority of our competitors. We can provide additional international capabilities to our customers over and above our competitors, and Global Connections brings all of that together.
I do genuinely believe it will become a sort of global standard for HSBC.
So fundamentally, it's a website. That's where we started. One of the things, though, you just can't put one global website up, because the thing that we needed to do was also make it applicable in local language. So we've now got 13 versions, if you like, of Global Connections, with 13 different sets of content all being driven into those different platforms and different groups. That's really important for us. So there will be some content that is global, but there will also be a lot of content that's local. And the ability for us to be able to flex that and use that on an ongoing basis with the audiences that we've got is really key. The other audience that we need to also make sure that they're seeing this is also our relationship managers. Because fundamentally, these are the guys and girls that are actually going to go out there and talk to customers. So what we have in an online world, we also want to make sure that they've got in an offline world as well, and they're actually using it with their customers, going back to that insight around what the customers are looking for, which is that strategic advice. We also do, as well as producing this, and I'm sure you got that from the film, we also produce a lot of tools. And I know that we were talking about tools this morning, actually, because the tool bit is actually really, really significant, because that's where the customer or the prospect or the relationship manager can actually go away and play with this stuff. So HSBC's involvement in that really can take a back seat, because they're actually playing with the content and using it for what they want to do. That's really, really key. And actually, when we look at the responses that we get, and we look at the information that comes through in terms of from LinkedIn, you can actually see that a lot of the prospects are actually using that information to make decisions. So it's really, really crucial that we have that. However, there are challenges. This audience is huge, and they're also quite busy, and they're quite complex. So if you just think about the mid-market in this country, you've got, I'm trying to think how many there are. We were trying to work it out, but in this country, it's about, the mid-market represents 6.1 trillion revenues of your GDP. It is a huge, huge market. The types of businesses that fit in this, that we're targeting here, that fit in this audience, they could be, fast-growing one-man bands that are really, really trying to take off and they want to go international, or they could be family-run businesses, or they could be businesses that do want to go into China. I mean, they're complex in the way they want to do things. The one thing that we know about them, though, is they are hungry for information. So trying to get into that narrow target audience has always been the thing that we've really been, trying to do. Then also trying to share the content with them and actually keep them motivated. And this is really where LinkedIn have come in. Because they can actually help us with that targeting, and they have, and I will talk about it in a minute, it's been amazing. And I'll tell you the story of how that's all worked. Okay, so what have we done with LinkedIn? We have, at a basic level, we've created company pages. So that's the straightforward thing that you have to do. We are in the process of trying to create, and Sally's sitting there, but we're trying to create groups all around the world. But I would say to you one thing that I would tell everybody: just make sure your legal and compliance team are sitting by your side when you do anything with social media, because that's always been our struggle, and it's been really hard to get some of that stuff to happen. But the other thing that we've been doing, though, is basically every time LinkedIn have a tool, we say, yes, please, let's see what we can do. So we've done a lot of work recently on the sponsored update piece. And this was about, because we had this lovely set of content that we've been building, and lots of great things around trade forecast tools and all sorts of other stuff that was going on, we wanted to find a way of getting that to that specific audience. So LinkedIn and us, we partnered about 3 months ago with a project around sponsored updates, which meant we could start to really push content to a very, very defined target audience. It allowed us to look at geography, it allowed us to look at pricing techniques, it allowed us to look at seniority of the actual people that were on LinkedIn, and also it allowed us to look at content. So for us, bearing in mind we have 13 sort of sites around the world that we're flexing, it was a great tool for us to be able to say, right, well that person is a CEO of a business in Saudi Arabia. What kind of content do I need to push to them? As a result of that, very quickly, I mean, if you can just look, this is some of the data, and it's, it's pretty raw data, but we got more followers by doing that activity than we'd probably done in lots of other things that we'd done. So, but we also got more followers of the sorts of businesses that we absolutely wanted to engage with. So for me, at the moment, I know we have 33,000 followers on Global Connections, which doesn't sound a lot when you look at it on a global scale. But I know that those 33,000 are the absolute perfect target audience for me, and for the business and for what we want to do. So I'm actually not worried about the volume rather, I'm worried about the quality. So that's the most crucial thing that this does. The other thing that we also found was that if we actually started to get the content right in terms of what kind of posts we put up there, what it did, it really drove the rates of engagement, which was absolutely crucial for us. And we allowed ourselves to sort of experiment. So we just didn't do one campaign, leave it. We did a couple of campaigns with various things going on. We'd switch them every 4 weeks and start to play with words, start to play with geography, and start to play with who we were targeting. So that worked really, really well. And I think if you just look at this one, for example, this particular piece that we did on leadership, which got us some really, really high engagement rates. We tested that, though, against another piece of content, and actually just by putting the leadership word in a specific place meant it drove a much greater engagement. So we've learnt loads, actually. We've learnt tons by doing this. And Lauren can give you the specific details of all of that if you want to. But we've learned an awful lot by just trying to fiddle around with words, just trying to change some of the things that we do, and actually making sure that we're driving that content, really targeted content, to those CEOs and FDs of those businesses that we really want to engage with. I think the other thing that for us has been fantastic is because we've got the LinkedIn groups sitting around Global Connections and how all that comes together, we don't actually take part in the conversation. I think it's a really important point to make. The reason why we don't is because We don't want to, actually, because actually the way that we want this to work, it should be about businesses connecting with businesses because they've got a common platform or a common desire to do something. So what we do is we seed the content and then we step back and then we allow them to have that dialogue. But because we also take this online platform to an offline audience as well, what we find then is that engagement is much stronger. So we try and replicate whatever we're doing online in an offline world. And I'll give you an example of that. 2 weeks ago in London, we had 50 businesses from 19 markets come to London. Now, all of them are on the Global Connections platform. They all already were talking to each other before they came. But what this did was actually put them in a live environment to have those discussions and for them to do business, and they did. And the substantial number of business that was written through that one event probably paid for Global Connections about 25 times over. So that's what we do. We try and not only take these things in terms of what they do in the online world, but we also try and put them into the offline world as well. We build tools. This is our latest tool, the trade forecast tool. And again, this is just, we produce this every 4 months. It gives a view of what we think the forecast of trade is going to be around the world. Any market can go in there that you can put your country in and you can see what's actually happening with who are the partners that you should perhaps be going to. So from a business point of view, this is a really, really useful tool. It talks to them about sectors, it talks to them about what kind of products. It's great, and we have fantastic feedback for this. We've also benefited, as I mentioned earlier, from the sort of geographic targeting as well. So, and this example around the Saudi Arabia example, we can, at a very, very sort of tiny levels, actually start to say, right, that CEO in that country, I'm going to feed them that bit of content. And it works, because they are engaging with it, and we're seeing that coming back. So it can be a really, really powerful tool. It also works around new stuff that's coming up. So the renminbi, the Chinese currency. So again, this is something that we believe businesses should know about at every level, by the way. Now, quite a lot of them may not be doing anything in the renminbi at the moment, but this currency is going to be, it's so critical. So what we want to do, again, is tell people about it. So if they do come to trade in renminbi, they come to us. So it does a brand job more than anything else for us in this particular instance. And then at a local market basis, when we actually work with our 13 local markets, and this is an example from the US team, what they will do is also take content at a local level. So in this particular case, we did some spotlights on trade, and this was around looking at markets within the US and how that's actually going to work in other markets. So again, we can actually tailor that content right down to that very specific market to actually drive a much greater engagement. I think the biggest challenge with this, because I'm sure if anybody asked me a question, that would be the question that I would ask, is, so how do you make it make money? Which is the million-dollar question, really. And it is hard, because actually, fundamentally, you can put all this fantastic content, and it's expensive to run because you need a really good content management system. You've got to make sure you're running it all around the world. You've got, and you need content to be constantly fed in. It's not something that you can just do once. So you need people to be, creating new content, and that needs to come from all sorts of areas. It can't just come from one area. I mean, we're lucky. We have a fantastic global research team that can feed us with content. I have partnerships now with The Economist, Wall Street Journal, LinkedIn help us with content. It comes from everywhere. We create our own content. We made films with the BBC to create content. There are so many places that you have to do this. So you are creating lots and lots of content. And then ultimately, you're doing this to, one, drive your brand, but also to drive revenues. So And I think we've still got to make that emotional leap, if you like, to do that next piece. And I'm hoping that LinkedIn are going to come up with a tool that's going to help me to do that. But I think we're working on it, because I do think it's important, because there does need to be some monetization, if you like, out of social media as we go forward. I'm going to leave it there. Have I spoken for long enough, James? Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Is there a microphone anywhere? Thank you. It's a lady in the, it's an orange jacket.
Thank you. That was very interesting. What I wanted to make sure that I understood was of the, I think it was the commercial banking page where you were saying there's 33,000 quality followers of that page. And is that the worldwide number, therefore, if you're doing content targeted, say, only at the Middle East, a smaller slice of that population is seeing the content? So is the engagement rate based on the targeted population or the whole population of the 33,000?
So the 33,000 is the total population that have engaged with the whole Global Connections piece. But then I can break that down by country. So, for example, in the US, I think we've got about 5,500 followers. And in Canada, I think it's something like 6. I might be wrong. The team are in the room. Is that right? Yeah, good, right. So, and then obviously I can break it down all around the markets. I mean, it does, but I think this is where you absolutely need to have the local country piece for it to work. Otherwise, the content becomes too vanilla and too bland. So the fact that you can actually tailor local and global content together works beautifully, actually. But you can always put that flavour on it. But that's how we've done it.
You mentioned how relationship managers have to, or have the opportunity to use this content.
Yeah.
Have you had to develop any particular kind of training for them in order to incorporate that into their normal routines? I
think that's a really, really good point. I think at the moment we haven't done that, and I think that's what we need to do, because you're right, you can't just give a relationship manager an article on the rise of renminbi in China and then expect them to completely understand that and understand the implications of what that then means for a business that might want to trade in renminbi. So you're right, you need to do that next stage, which then sort of gives them more information about how they can use it. Now, quite a lot of our training schemes that we put in place are doing that. But do they, I'll be honest, do they actually have that direct link yet at the moment? No, but it's something we're working on.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. That was really helpful and inspirational. My question is, what were you doing prior to the launch of Global Connections? It seems like it's such a large endeavor. There had to be an inflection point for the business to commit to invest at that level. Okay. So I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah. So, okay, so I've worked for the bank now for about 10 years. No, it's not, 13 years actually. And probably about 6-7 years ago, I was just running the UK. So, and the reason I'm telling this story is because it leads me to why we did this. And what we were doing before, when I was in the UK, was we would do event after event after event to do this stuff. And I used to go and speak at a lot of events about women in business, and you know, it was great, but it was also quite nutty, because you could spend your whole time just putting hundreds of people through events. So we piloted almost like a social website, if you like, in the UK, which cost us so much money to do it, and it didn't really work, and we learnt loads from that. So that was the reason why we then went on to develop Global Connections, because of all the learnings that we'd done from the UK, from the social networking site that we'd created there, which failed. I think everyone should have something that fails, by the way, because if you don't, you never learn. And the thing that I learned there was that if I didn't get the moderation and the content right, then it was never going to work. And it cost a lot of money for me to learn that, by the way. But that was okay. And I also learned that I should never really the HSBC should never really do their own social networking site, and they should go to someone like LinkedIn and do it with them. That's the other thing I really learned as well. So, which was good. So, so that's what we were doing before. We were just doing it by, face-to-face events. It was hard. I mean, we still do an awful lot of events. Don't get me wrong, but what this does is it allows, I think, content to be delivered to a much wider, a much broader audience, but also allows you that very specific targeting piece as well. So it just does everything more on scale.
Just picking up on the word scale, it's impressive scope and scale, but I'm wondering, have you had the ability to be somewhat timely with your content on a local or global level? The impression you give is that a lot of the content is planned well in advance, but is there something that you can react to with your content, either globally or locally?
Okay, so we work off two tracks in a way. So we do have, you're right, there is a lot of stuff that has to be planned well advanced. However, we also do put a lot of stuff on Lauren, who is here, we will also, and with the other markets, we will also post a lot of stuff locally, very, very timely as well. So we run on two tracks. So, but you are right. The broader piece, like for example, like the Ideas Exchange, the films we did with the BBC. Clearly, you've got to plan that stuff, way in advance to get the production qualities and everything else. But if we wanted to just post something about the renminbi because we'd seen something that we picked up through, news feeds or whatever else, we can do that. And also working with people like The Economist, it helps us to get that stuff up there quicker. So it's not always that. As I say, it's not all our content. So that's why I think you need an absolute mixture of both.
Hi. This is a question about the curation and the creation process of your content.
Yep.
You mentioned that quality is paramount for you, but obviously getting the cadence right and the frequency right is probably secondary to that. So can you talk a little bit about what the biggest pain points are for you in the curation and the creation of the content?
Biggest pain point is legal and compliance, and for good reason. But because obviously anything we post, we need to make sure that there's objectivity in it, and it meets their requirements, to be quite honest. So that's one of the biggest pain points. I think there's a fine line that you have to tread with this stuff, that you're not giving advice. Because you do have to be really, really careful. So I think we've always made sure that the articles that we're posting are, they're still they have to be absolutely insightful and really, really valuable, but you just need to make sure that you've got that right. So that's where I think the biggest pain points comes, is through legal and compliance and just making sure that you've got robust, good content that's going to be insightful. So, and it does take time. But I think we have an editorial committee, which, and again, I have two committees. We started to have an editorial steerco, and then we had a working group. I got rid of the steerco because in the end it didn't help, if you see what I mean, because you need things to happen quickly. So, and I think now even the working group one, in theory they should meet every week. I don't think they do. I think we just get on with it now, because if you turn it into too much of a bureaucracy, you never get anything out the door.
So, first of all, for once, I'm very happy that my employer is not outside of the United States, because it makes it easier on me. I have a question for you. So, are relationship managers allowed to share that content that you are posting on Global Connections via their LinkedIn profiles or any other social tools? And if so, are you using a middleware company? How are you going about managing the monitoring and archiving for regulated users?
So we have tools in the UK, for example, where we use a company. So what we do, we give the relationship managers an email with approved content that they can then send directly to their customers. But we don't have it everywhere around the world, and that's another thing that we're trying to do at the moment. So we pull content out of Global Connections, put it through this email, and it goes straight through into the relationship manager. But at the moment we're doing that in the UK, and I think are we trying it in the US? Not at the moment. No, we've got other plans for the US. So we try things in different places because, again, you're right, you have to work within local regulation, and obviously the regulation in some markets is a little bit more challenging than others. So, but that's what we do in the UK. Time for one more. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that. Very, very insightful. My question relates to, in looking at the HSBC LinkedIn presence, it seems that you're quite segmented. And I'm sort of curious as to how you decide which lines of business or which partners get their own affiliate or showcase pages.
Good question. The relationship with LinkedIn is run by myself, actually, and my team. So it does tend to be run by the business-to-business side at the moment. However, we also have just signed a big partnership deal with the HR side, so we've also got that working too. And we'll move to get the retail side working as well, because there shouldn't be that issue. That just shouldn't happen. But I think it is about making sure that you've got the right relationships in place to make it work. I mean, one of the things that we are doing at the moment is tidying up our LinkedIn presence, because I think we counted something like 47 different sites. So what we're trying to do is consolidate that back so that we only have really, I don't know, what were we aiming for? 5? Yeah, we're aiming for 5, yeah. But you are right, it's a mess if you have 47. The other problem we have is that people create their own. So, so someone went to, there's lots of things like that. So again, we're just trying to tidy up those as well. Okay, thank you.